What's up, Gear Mortals? Trey Xavier here, and on today's edition of Gear God's Quality Control, we're going to be taking a look at the SH5 Stomp-Head from Taurus Amps. Taurus Amplification is a company in Poland that makes a whole line of these guitar amp heads that are built into pedals, as well as a series of just regular old effects stomp boxes. The SH5 is an entire guitar amplifier head, preamp and power amp that's 3 channels in a pedal. This thing is reasonably light and really tiny for being so powerful. It's switchable between 40 watts or 90 watts of solid state power. And there's a tube in the preamp, a 12AX7 tube. The channels are clean, crunch, and high gain. And there's a mute button and a boost built right in. There's also a noise gate built in, which is a pretty cool feature. And the boost is a variable level boost. It's not just like a preset boost. One thing I really like about these knobs is that they're clearly marked that going up this way is boosting the frequency, like the bass, middle, or treble frequency, and going the other way is cutting it. So sometimes it's kind of unclear what knobs do because they're not marked that well. Sometimes it starts at 0, like flat, if it's all the way to the left, and then you're just boosting all the way up. Or I've even seen it the other way around, where all the way up is flat and then you cut as you go down, more like a filter knob. So it's really nice that they're very clear about what does what on here. So ton of cool features on the back here. We've got, of course, the speaker out, which is 4, 8, or 16 ohm. There's no switch. You can just plug in any of those ohmages and it just knows or will work with any of those. We have an effects loop, which is always on. There isn't a switch for it. Here's the input and the power switch, and then sort of a high or low gain input, which you can use, like if you've got active pickups, you can take it down a notch so you're not overloading it. There's also these external control relay inputs. So if you have some kind of a device that switches using using relay, you can just plug them in here and you can switch out the channels and the boost using your external controller. There is no MIDI capability in this pedal at all, which was a little disappointing to me because I thought that would just give it a little bit more flexibility. There's a handy little switch here where you can switch the voltage from 110 to 230 for different countries. And then there's this normal and mix mode, which basically mix mode means that you have all 3 channels on at once, which I didn't think sounded very good. I did not find that to be useful at all, but what do I know? Last but not least, we have this line out in the back, so you could go direct to front of house if you like, or into something else. It's got either just regular line out or speaker sim out. Overall, I think this is a pretty spectacular design for an amp. Being able to have this as your entire amp and have it on the floor and then just bring a cab with you is, I think, a great idea for touring bands. Not having a big old tube head taking up all kinds of room in the trailer, it being this small and light. Of course, I'm sitting here holding it up and it's starting to get heavier, but that's, to me, could be like the future of touring. If you could get all kinds of rigs that are this size, basically what I'm saying is I'm hoping that this becomes a trend and that they just, they build on this idea. Now, that being said, I think they need to work on the sounds a little bit more. I think there's a lot of things they could do to improve it. I think it needs a ton more gain. I had to boost it with an overdrive to really get a sort of metal sound out of it. It's got an okay amount of gain, but just not a ton of sustain. And it doesn't, I don't know. I didn't love the sound personally. I thought it was good, but definitely not great. And I think that they should consider implementing some kind of power amp simulation, like a tube power amp simulation, to go in this, because I think really where it's lacking is in the power amp department. Solid state power amps just don't sound that great for guitar. They don't have a ton of character. They're very flat and kind of bland sounding. And although this sounds a hell of a lot better than like your typical crate, solid state combo or something like that, it's still got a pretty good ways to go. You know, they've got a preamp tube in there, which helps a bit. But I think in order for this to really replace a typical touring rig, I think they're going to have to work on those sounds a little bit. Touring bands need stuff like this because we need to make it as easy as possible for touring bands to move about the country, as it were, without having a ton of crap in the trailer, you know, keep gas costs down of going on tour and all that sort of stuff. And I think this is a step in the right direction for sure. I think that this amp and this company has a ton of potential. I think they have the potential to really revolutionize the touring guitar amplifier, especially for smaller bands who, you know, can't spend a ton of money to tour and just need the simplest, lightest setup with the least amount of hassle. And I think that they can do that, but I don't know if this is it yet. The amp is extraordinarily loud. I wouldn't worry about volume. I know it seems like, you know, it's pretty small, and to have a full-on power amp in here is pretty damn impressive in and of itself. So if you're worried about that, don't. This will compete just fine against your drummer and all of that. Having a built-in noise gate is a really handy feature in something like this. You know, it keeps you from having to have a completely separate pedal on your board for just that. But I think this one also needs a little bit of tweaking, or just having a second knob. Right now it's just basically a sensitivity knob for the gate. And I found that it was kind of slow at the ends of passages where I wanted it to either cut off a bit faster or have the slope a little less steep. Right now, it's slow to close and then very steep of a cutoff. I want it to be a little bit faster and a little less of a, you know, super steep cutoff, personally. One thing that would make the SH5 infinitely more useful for me on stage is if you linked the loop, the effects loop, to the boost button, and at least had the option of having the loop on only when the boost is turned on for like a guitar solo, you know, because generally my rhythm guitar sound is pretty dry, or entirely dry basically, and then lead guitar is when I want to have a bunch of, you know, delay and reverb and usually like an EQ and stuff like that. And of course you want it to be louder, hence the boost. So I think if you had a switch to either have the loop on all the time or just when the boost was on, this would just be so much more useful to me in a live setting. So in conclusion, I find it to be incredibly impressive that they managed to put an entire 3-channel 90-watt guitar amp head into a pedal this size and this weight. And I think that with a little bit of work, this could be an absolutely incredible product. Basically, I'm excited to see the next iteration of what Taurus Amps put out, because I think that they're poised for really great things, and I want them to take this idea and just work it out a little bit more and take it one step further. For more information on the Taurus SH5, go to taurus-amp.pl. Thanks so much for watching, and if you haven't already, please hit subscribe for more reviews and original content.